Hello, everybody, and welcome to season 9 of the Crypto Hipster podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all throughout the world of crypto and blockchain globally. And today I have another amazing guest for you. So far, all my guests have been amazing, all 540 of them. So it's been a great show. So to start off, I'll introduce. His name is Pavel Jakovlev, and he is the head of product innovation and growth at Swiss crypto bank AMINA. Pavel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jamil, and it's an absolute pleasure being with you. I guess I'm guest number 441. So it's something within that range, and it's great. And congratulations on your incredible success. I love the fact that people are listening, getting the right amount of education. Hopefully, creating wallets, connecting wallets, trading, degening, getting rugged to a certain degree, right? I think it's all part of the process that you have to go through. And yeah, I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome. 541. So, but I did interview a man from your organization, Miles, back in like a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. And that was a wonderful conversation. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you. So let's kick things off. And I'll ask you first, what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
I would say so. So I've been in, let's call it Web3 space, right? Back in the day, it was called blockchain and then crypto, and then went to DeFi and all sorts of nomenclature. But now I guess we're landing with Web3 to a certain degree. So I've been in the space, in the industry for about a decade. I've started in venture capital. I ran an incubation program, actually a couple of them over here in Switzerland. Then after that, I started up my own company. That company grew into what is commonly known as a venture builder. So we were, building and launching our own projects, predominantly in the DeFi space. So a ton of DeFi primitives and a few NFT projects, and that was to a certain degree successful. We went through the DeFi summer, I'd say pretty successfully, but at the time, based on everybody's trading patterns and COVID helicopter money, all projects were doing tremendously well, right? And I think around 22, 23, I started seeing this shift towards, I'd say, more regulation, right? We started seeing regulation becoming more relevant in Europe and some of the other jurisdictions. The VASP licensing became pretty commonplace, and then the European Union started coming out with, some early ideas around what is now known as the MiCA license. And then as we rolled into 2024, it was pretty evident that TradFi is finally willingly coming on chain, right? With a few projects, a few deployments here and there, a few test pilots. And for me at the time, I was pretty comfortable navigating DeFi, pretty comfortable navigating, permissionless environments. So to me, it was, I'd say, an intellectual curiosity to see how are things set up on the TradFi side. And, I think Amina is the perfect example how you actually merge the two worlds, right? So it's a crypto first bank that has been around for 7 years, and it's manages to merge the two worlds, the fiat world and the crypto world, in a quite a seamless way. And to me, I just wanted to learn more, and I was given an incredible opportunity. I actually report into your former guest, Miles, and we're working together. He's one of the great leaders at Amina, even from the perspective that I always like to say this, it's there's never a no at the bank, right? So we're always keen to try out new things. We're always keen to look at different opportunities. The bank is pretty entrepreneurial. It serves entrepreneurs as well and entrepreneurial companies. So we're always comfortable doing the next big thing, the next exciting idea within the limits of the regulatory control, obviously. And that's what drew me to this opportunity. So to sum it all up, yes, it's logical. And I'd say I'm seeing now the other side of the of the industry. Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to get into Amina first before we get into Micah. I wasn't planning on getting into it, but you mentioned it, so I got to get into it. But I want to talk about Mina first. What's it all about, including your role, your focus, and your vision with there?
Yeah. So it's a it's a bank. We hold a banking license out of Switzerland. So if you think about UBS, we're pretty much on the same level when it comes to the regulation, right? So that means that we can handle pretty much all of the traditional banking services, right? Depository, exchange, investments, etc. At the same time, there's the license allows us to also integrate digital assets, and that has been pretty much by design from the get-go. There's only two banks that are doing this in the world, and both of them are in Switzerland. It's Signum, our I would say frenemy, right? Because we are competitors, but at the same time, it's great that both founding teams and then managing teams have set a vision back in 2018, and now we're seeing that vision actually coming true, right? It's We're seeing more banks exploring custody, exploring trading, staking, et cetera, et cetera. And then with that, basically what Amina has is a suite of products that I've already alluded to on the crypto side as well, right? So we have our dedicated custody services. We are a regulated custodian, so we can hold coins, an array of coins to that, for that matter. Uh, Obviously, trading. We can build up all sorts of different strategies around both fiat and crypto. And then obviously, staking, we also do lending, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole suite of services. And then, we predominantly serve institutional investors. This means that it's either high net worth individuals or professional investors, high net worth individuals and ultras. In our case, it's predominantly the OG Bitcoin, Ethereum investors. And then we also serve companies, so corporates, high frequency trading firms, foundations, et cetera, et cetera. And something that I must plug in is one of our offerings for Web3 startups. This is quite a new offering that we have created, and that's it's not necessarily a revenue generating offering, right? But at the same time, we do see a clear need in the space to bank startups, Web3 startups, who have been unfortunately denied very basic banking services for more than a decade. Let's call it like this, right? It's known. It's not just a European or US problem. It's a global problem, right? It's The startups have been denied very basic banking services and usually rejected or kicked out or debanked, which is quite unfortunate. And then maybe coming back to what my vision is, I think as Amina has started its path in 2018, and as services and products have been developing over the past good 5 years after we got our license in 2019 and started getting first deposits in 2020, I would say that suite of services works great, seamless, right? So now I would say we're looking at the next frontier, and that next frontier is what does Amina look like over the next 5 years? What type of services would we offer? What role do we play in the TradFi, CDFi, or the on-chain movement, however you want to call it, right? The real-world asset tokenization, the yield generating strategies, restaking, et cetera, et cetera. And it's both an intellectual challenge, it's a technical challenge, it's a legal compliance regulatory challenge, and that's what's drawn me to this position. This is what we're talking about inside Amina.
Great. So now I'm going to go to the bad word, and that's Micah. Uh, I've had a number of guests on my show explain Micah, and it's in the very beginning as a first round, people were excited and it sounded promising. Now the sentiment on it is a little different. It's European companies are restricted especially when the stable coins are now taking off, are restricted by the Micah rules and regulations. So in order to get that evolution for digital assets, in order to understand where the next frontier is, we have to I think look at where are you at in the MiCA, and how are you going to navigate the fact that Europe now seems to be falling behind a bit?
So I would say, as a regulated bank, we're always pro-regulation. So for us, we don't view regulation as a bad thing. We welcome it. We believe that more regulation will basically enable more capital inflows because that capital would feel safer in the regulated environment. We can debate and discuss whether that regulation, whatever regulation, is guided or misguided. The regulation is here, right? So we have to adapt to it. We have to be compliant with it. We have to work with the local regulators to ensure that their understanding of micro rules is similar to industry standards and our understanding. And then I also, envision that most probably there will be a number of cases that will be taken to the European Court of Justice that potentially will then, through litigation, further shape and mold this regulatory framework. Because it's I would say in its current state it provides enough guidance, but there's also a few things that would have to be defined and refined and further extrapolated, and that to me, is usually done through case law. And this is something that I would invite the coalition of the unwilling to band together and basically just have a rational discussion with different regulators on the local level, on the European level, with the European Commission. There's phenomenal lobbying efforts that are done at the Brussels effort. I got to I have to shout out to CCI that have been quite prominent on the Hill in the US. They're building up their capabilities in Brussels as well. I think we as an industry have to be more engaged in shaping the legislative process because it affects all of us. It affects companies, it affects service providers, and then it affects users as well.
I agree. Okay, so then let's go to the evolution of digital asset adoption, right? What have been some of your greatest insights from the digital asset adoption evolution, and what do you think has worked the best?
That's a very loaded question. So let's try to unpack it, right? I think you obviously cannot deny the fact that the stablecoins is that killer application, right? It's pretty much clear. I think something that I'm particularly excited about is yield on stablecoins. I think that's going to be the next frontier for folks to solve. We've obviously gone through the booms and busts of all types of different, non one-to-one pegged stable coins, right? The Terra Lunas, etc. And to me, of course, it's incredibly heartbreaking to see people lose their money. Yet at the same time, these were all experiments. Do we have this figured out in this cycle? Let's see. There's a number of players around that are doing a lot of good stuff. I have to give a shout out to Athena. I have to give a shout out to the guys at Solstice for USX and some of the other quite interesting solutions that are being built up. So to me, that's a clear narrative and a trend, right? How do you enable seamless transactions, off-ramping through stablecoins, and then how do you then, as a next step, enable, PayFi, right? If I'm holding a specific coin, if I'm holding USDG, for example, right, which comes out of the consortium Paxos, Visa, and a bunch of other folks. If I hold USDG, I'm receiving yield, right? But then if I subscribe to something and that something costs some type of an amount, can I offset that, let's say, membership through holding that stable coin, and then that yield would pay for that membership? Can I maybe borrow against that, against another asset and get paid out in USDG and offset my credit rate through that? So these are all applications that I see will be most probably already being built and will continue to be built with the stablecoin use case. So that to me is the major one. On the flip side, I would say tokenization, single stock, equities, tokenized assets, et cetera, et cetera. I want this thing to work. I really do. I think there's a lot of good work that's done by Backed Finance. There's a lot of work that's done by Robinhood and Ondo. I still don't see it, right? So it's still very, very difficult. So we're approaching these things for obvious reasons because of regulation and issuance and different jurisdictional limitations, still in a very clunky way, right? We don't have liquidity figured out. There is not a lot of trading volume on the assets that are available in DeFi. And I just want us as an industry to solve this, because if we do, or when we do, rather, not if, then it's again, it opens up so many possibilities. The structured products that you can create, imagine Pendle creating some type of a wrapped product with like a few equities, Athena, some tokenized debt, and some crazy, hype derivative that pays you, 50, 60, 70% APY. Why not? It's possible.
From what I've seen, anything's possible on hype. So
That's very true. And even more is possible on Aster.
well, I can't go to Coinbase here in the US and buy hype. I was like, when are you going to list it? So yeah. You said something early on though. You said you have a new product coming out that's banking for startups, and I know I can't go to like PayPal's like, okay, you have a business. Let's give me some startup money. I apply. Oh, you don't have a salary or income. With that, I was like, but I have crypto. I can stake. Like, oh, we're not going to do that. So I'm like, I can't get capital as a startup. I haven't been able to. But you said you claim the role of product innovation in crypto startups is very important. So
Mhm.
how do you get the product innovation if you can't get the money?
Yeah.
So what's the role there, the product innovation, and why is it important, and how do you help crypto startups get there?
Yeah. So from our perspective, we obviously want to be able to bank startups, right? And then enable both fiat rails and crypto rails for them. So whether they have gone through a raise, whether they've raised that through fiat or stable coins or ETH or BTC, we want to enable them to custody it with us. Same thing if they were granted some tokens from a foundation or multiple foundations, we allow them to custody these tokens with us and then exchange them into fiat, pay for AWS, pay for Google Docs and the G Suite, et cetera, right? So that's the whole purpose of this offering for us. And again, we hope that these startups will grow, and we will grow with them. When it comes to the actual product and services innovation, I don't think that specific line is super innovative. I think it's pretty basic banking services, which unfortunately have been denied to startups. Where it gets interesting from our side is we continuously look into sandbox initiatives. So we have quite a strong API suite. So something that we're talking to a number of L1s and L2s around creating isolated sandboxes for their ecosystem to effectively plug in. So if you are looking to build, dApps, or even let's take it even further, fintechs, and you would require a regulated access or regulated API access, and you want to build your innovation on top of the bank's APIs, you should be able to do that.
Got it. Got it. So you also said the next frontier. You're moving into the next frontier. So what technology innovations are you seeing today that maybe we had? You mentioned DeFi Summer before too. So what innovations are you seeing today that we have not had, that people aren't really looking at yet, that you think will lead us into the next frontier?
I I absolutely fascinated by what the V3s and V4s and even V2s of some of the protocols have been building up, right? I think there is, the way that I explain it is, there's both a push from TradFi to understand DeFi better, and then there's a pull initiative from DeFi to to figure out how to plug in a way, right? And really understand what would it take for the regulated capital to flow into DeFi? So what does that mean in practice? So if you look at Lido, right, Lido V3, it gives you so much configurability, I think is the word. You can configure a lot of different things. With Lido V3, you can make access permissioned, fully isolated if you wish to, and you communicate directly to the beacon chain. It's composable. It's all these different buzzwords, right? It's there. So it's already live today. Then if you look at Morpho V2 that's coming later in the year, it's the same thing, right? It's isolation, it's KYC'd assets, it's whitelisting, it's attestations, it's hooks, more permissions. So that's, again, a drive for these protocols to be more, I would say, compliant and more accessible for TradFi folks. And then if you also look at protocols like 1inch and Uniswap, pretty much all of them have, with Solana as well as an L1, they have institutional divisions, right? Which means that they do want to have both their technology figured out and at the same time liquidity and isolation. So institutions can play with these protocols quite comfortably.
Got it. So so you see, okay. So I want to go back a little bit then.
Mm-hmm.
The role of, like, if I look, there's a lot of social, like, justice issues in the U.S. right now, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
could say that. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name events, but and people look to the Constitution and they're like, it says X, Y, Z in the Constitution, and but there's case law, and case law has a huge ramification on the impact of things. So as we have more case law developing, as you see these innovations, what trends do you see as shaping the sustainable growth for decentralized finance?
Thank you. It's again a very loaded question. So let's try to unpack this. And I love these, right? So if I think about it, there's no denying the fact that we're seeing some type of emerge, right? So both industries or both liquidity paths are merging. There's a massive amount of capital that is trapped in TradFi that's inefficient. You get the statistics daily how some of the asset managers and issuers spend tens of billions on accounting stuff, right? Just because they have to kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Create a level playing field across all of their different assets that they've issued. So in my opinion, blockchain solves that. But at the same time, if you look on the DeFi side or on the technology side, I think we have to also try to understand the industry that we are disrupting better. Because a lot of the cases, yes, it's these days it's fairly easy. If you go to Reservoir and tap into their APIs, within a few minutes you have a working decentralized exchange. Right? All you need is a front end, which you can build with a bunch of AI tools, and you got it up and running. But does it really serve the purpose? Right. So we need to figure out a way how we can, as you mentioned correctly, in a sustainable way, merge the two systems, because I think there's a lot that both sides have to offer to each other. TradFi does have that liquidity that potentially DeFi could capitalize on, and DeFi brings that, and blockchain as a technology brings that across that efficiency that most probably TradFi doesn't have right now, because it's based on legacy systems from 1940s and 1950s. We had a great conversation today with one of the largest issuers in the world, and they said, why we issue assets, we issue trackers in the US, and they're tracking this specific asset class, and then why shouldn't somebody who is in Thailand who holds USDC or USDT be able to buy this immediately? So why is there? We need to figure out a way how to create a new entity somewhere and then bring it into that and then go through the broker, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we merge these two worlds together? And it's instant, it's on chain, and it's accessible and it's tradable 24/7.
I would think the best entity to try to do that will be a bank, crypto bank.
Maybe. I'm just gauging an appetite and the resources internally immediately. But yeah, we you never know.
Okay, great. Um, so the future of crypto banking is what you think it is. We have so much going on, right? We have stable coins, we have all this new innovation. What do you see as the future of crypto banking?
One simple interface that allows you to access any type of asset, whether it's issued through traditional rails or on-chain rails, and it's also at the same time a trusted guide for people that are only just getting started in DeFi, for example, and they want to experiment with protocol trading platform, yield platform, and they know that whatever they do, their funds are safe. So that's where I would see this. Right?
Okay. Because I mean, like I said, I don't use Robinhood, the app. I
Yeah,
don't, I don't use like was using Coinbase, and then like I tried to make a purchase last week or a few days ago, and it said my bank is showing non-sufficient funds, and I go to my bank app and I look at the money that I have in my account, and I'm like, there's no way I have non-sufficient funds. So that word trust, like somewhere along the line, my trust was not like one of those entities not trusting me right now. So
yeah.
how do I capture that trust, especially if I'm in Thailand or if I'm in Cambodia, if I'm in the U.S. So I'm lucky, right? But how do you be somebody in these developing nations who the institutions can start to trust? How do you know how do you get there?
Yeah, I look, it's we already have that infrastructure. It's different chains, it's oracles. I think there's been a ton of work done around smart contract safety, obviously the API safety, what is it? Hack for Arena? I forget the name. There's continuous bounties that are created. All the protocols are going through rigorous security audits. That trust is being built up. So I think we're on a good path there. And also, I was telling somebody recently. I said, when was the last time you interacted with PancakeSwap? So PancakeSwap is phenomenal at this, right? So the second that you put in a smart contract address and you want to trade your token, it immediately goes, well, hold on a second. There's a few things over here. There's potential exploit here. Look at this here. We don't like this here. Are you sure you want to proceed? So just like with internet, right? We will have those trust pilots and the Google reviews and everything else that are going to help people navigate the space better and just make things safer.
Awesome. I look forward to when we get there. Where we, your vision. I see it. I just don't see how. Like we're not there right now, but we will be, I believe. So,
For sure.
you know, So I want to find a couple more things. One thing, I'm not going to grill you in the next question. I'm just going to ask you what excites you the most about your role and what you're looking and what you're doing and what excites you the most.
Honestly, I think the ability to work with the most leading companies, protocols, service providers, platforms, both in TradFi and blockchain. It's phenomenal. Somebody who's coming from relatively small VC and then my own company, the ability to work with these tremendous companies that I've always felt unattainable. But now we have the ability to talk to them, to create something together, to think about solutions together. I think that's one of the most exciting things, and it's incredibly rewarding. What excites me in general in the industry, I I tell people we've started with Bitcoin and we've done a full circle and we're going back to Bitcoin. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening very discreetly, very quietly, but there's a lot of stuff that's happening around Bitcoin, and I'm just waiting to get my head blown completely by one of these, white papers that will come out at some point and technologies. We will figure out yield on Bitcoin, I'm sure. Bitcoin yield on Bitcoin specifically. So I'm just waiting for that moment. Um,
Yeah, I've had a couple interviews already. People are working on it, so uh,
exactly.
so I want to thank you very much for your time today. I enjoyed speaking with you. I have one last question. It's the easiest one I asked you. Is how can people find out more information about you and about Amina?
Yeah, just visit our website, aminagroup.com, where you can also find us on Circle's partnership page. So we're one of Circle's partners. Yeah, we're on our socials. We're on LinkedIn. We're on X. I think that's pretty much it. We do phenomenal research. We do, I think, weekly or bi-weekly research updates. We do mailers. We have a phenomenal research team, so subscribe to that if you want to learn more. I think it's we truly do have. I mean, I say this with not shilling, saying this with the highest pride and regard to our research team. So I'm yeah, incredibly lucky and fortunate to work with them.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.